Hello and welcome to another Tech Talk brought to you by the Albert Lea Public Library. Today, we are going to be talking about internet browser extensions. This may be something you're familiar with, it may be something new to you, but I'm going to give you the basics of what they are, what they do, why you might want them, where to download them, and then safety tips if you do decide to use them. So internet browser extensions add additional features to web pages, and they integrate your internet browser with other services. And so a few reasons you might use them. As I mentioned, there's easy integration with other services. And I'll talk about this when I give some examples on the next slide. However, one of the popular browser extensions is the Pinterest Pin It button. So if you're looking at something on a website and you have that browser extension installed, all you do is click on the symbol for the pin it, and then it generates a pin that you can then put onto a Pinterest board. So something like that makes it really easy to use some services and save things. So those are some reasons why you might want to use it. You get additional features. Some browser extensions are made to work across the board, such as browser extensions that read what you're writing to automatically correct your spelling. So those are used on all websites. And then some browser extensions you can use to modify websites, such as blocking advertisements and things like that. So as I mentioned, they can include ad blockers. There's also text translation. So if you're in another country or you would like to use the internet in a different language, you can have it automatically translate every web page for you in the language that you want to read it in. Just a few examples, and then a couple popular browser extensions that you may be familiar with. The Evernote Web Clipper, if you use Evernote, which is a service that allows you to take notes, save photos, things like that. You can add an Evernote Web Clipper to the browser, which makes it really easy to save web pages. And those web pages then show up in your Evernote account. LastPass, this is a password management extension that allows you to have separate passwords for websites, but then there's a one master password for LastPass that you use to then access the passwords for other websites. So this is a pretty popular browser extension. And then, as I mentioned a little while ago, the Pinterest Pin It button is a very popular browser extension. It makes it very easy to create pins from websites when you're looking at them to your account. And those are just a few popular ones. There are a ton of other browser extensions available, but those are the ones that are used the most and work with services such as Pinterest and Evernote that you may have heard of before. So browser extensions are similar to software in that there's always a little bit of a risk anytime you do something on the computer with software for viruses, malicious intent, things like that. So if you're looking at browser extensions, you want to look at who's developing them and pick trustworthy extensions. So for instance, the Pin It extension is developed to work with Pinterest. It has been used by tons of people, and when you're thinking about it, it's lower risk than maybe LastPass, which is a extension that keeps your passwords, because the Pin It button will ask for your password and log in for Pinterest so that it can post directly to Pinterest for you. But you're able to, just share websites rather than having to share totally sensitive information. And so a bad or malicious browser extension could possibly capture sensitive information. Browsers oftentimes ask for permission to read your web traffic. So the translation tools, the tools that correct your grammar and spelling, those are usually about reading your web traffic and changing things in real time. And so there might be a risk there, because if the wrong person gets the information, they may have access to sensitive data. But if you stick with extensions from well-known developers and extensions that are well-reviewed, have been around a while, your risks are minimal. It's not to say that there's no risk. There's always a risk. You know, anytime you're on the internet, there's a risk of someone potentially capturing your data. But it's minimal if you stick to you know, extensions that are from reputable companies and have been well reviewed by people. And browser extensions do take up a little bit of space. So, and they can also slow down your computer or your browser a little bit. And so you want to avoid overloading your computer with them. So if you want to try out a few, great. If there's extensions that you install that you decide you don't want to use, or maybe you installed an extension at one time and you don't use it anymore, you want to uninstall those so that it's not on your computer and taking up space. So if you watched our tech talk about the different internet browsers, you'll know that there are differences between internet browsers. They're made from different companies. They work a little bit differently. So different internet browsers have different extensions. I'm just going to touch on two examples here. Almost all major internet browsers have some extensions, but Firefox and Chrome are the two most widely used internet browsers that have a wide range of extensions available. So Firefox is the web browser that has the most extensions available, and many extensions that are on Firefox, they may not be available on other browsers, because Firefox is a little bit more open. It's not controlled by one of the huge tech companies like Google or Apple or Microsoft. They allow a little bit more of that type of thing. They aren't as tightly controlled on their extensions. So if someone, you know, mentions an extension, it may not be available on other browsers, but chances are it is on Firefox. And then Google Chrome also has a large variety, but it has more limits. And this is true for most of the browsers that are controlled by the top tech companies. They put a little bit more limitations on companies that are developing browser extensions. So they might not be quite as powerful as in Firefox. They let them do a variety of things, but just know that not everyone's going to be available. Or if it is available in Google Chrome, the features may be a little bit different than Firefox. The limits on Chrome, though, that they put on these developers mainly have to do with security. So, you know, those limits, they may be for a good reason. And Chrome is also, just to be aware, the only web browser currently that requires users to grant permission for extensions. So a lot of times extensions need permission to read your web traffic, to have access to certain things. And so Chrome, when you download it, you know, most of the time it'll ask you to check the box. Knowing what extensions are required, are asking for from the web browser is really important. That's one way to check your security. The majority of them are going to ask for, you know, access to all your traffic. But just know that, and if the web browser does not ask you to grant the permission, it assumes that you grant the permission when you download it, and it could be in that fine print. But you may want to research that and check in if there's an extension that you're not quite sure about. And then one note I just want to make about an extension versus a plugin. You may be familiar with plugins. Flash, for example, is a plugin. Plugins add features that websites use. So many websites use Flash in their code. So it requires you to download Flash in order to see the website how they intend it to see. But extensions add features that you, as the user, can use. So there's the difference. You're downloading a plugin, so websites have access to that plugin. But an extension gives you features that you can use. So those are the two main differences. They're very similar, but that's the difference between the two of them. And so you may be thinking, okay, this sounds great. Where can I look for browser extensions? Browser extensions are available in the Chrome Web Store. Mozilla has an add-ons kind of store. The other internet browsers have their own extension stores. So look for those. You'll definitely want to get them from the store for the internet browser if you're thinking of using an extension to be safe. And generally, extensions are not available for tablets and smartphones. They have different integration systems, they run on different operating systems, and so extensions are not optimal for browsing on a tablet and a smartphone. But many tablets and smartphones have features. So for instance, if you download the Pinterest app on your smartphone, you're looking at a website, you hit the share button, a lot of times you'll see a share button right to Pinterest. So they integrate differently. So that way, there's really no need for extensions on tablets and smartphones if they're going to integrate across the apps. And so just to kind of sum up what we've talked about internet browser extensions, I know it might be a little confusing. So extensions can be useful. They add features that may be something that you want to look at. For instance, I go back to Pinterest because the majority of people are familiar with Pinterest, and their extension is one of the most widely used ones. If you use Pinterest a lot, you're looking at websites. Instead of having to copy and paste the URL, go back to the Pinterest website to create a pin, you hit the little Pinterest logo for your pin it button, a drop-down box comes up, and you type in, your description, you select which board you want to put it on Pinterest, hit the enter button, and it's immediately added to your Pinterest board of your choice. So they can be really useful. You just want to be aware that there can be some risks using them, just like anything you're doing on the internet. And then the tips that I mentioned to use them as safely as possible. Don't install too many. Install only the extensions that you're going to use. Install extensions only from the official stores for the browsers. And pay attention to who has developed the extension. Is it from a reputable company? Does the extension have a lot of reviews? That's important. Pay attention to the permissions that the extensions require from your web browser. Does it require access to everything, or is it just a select amount of information, and what are you comfortable with providing it? And then it's a good practice to go into your settings of your web browser periodically and delete any extensions that you do not use or you do not trust. You may have downloaded an extension at one time and didn't know you did, and haven't uninstalled it. It's better to uninstall it. That way, if there's a problem with it, you don't use it and you don't have it anymore. But also, it will free up a little bit of space, and so it could be slowing down your internet browser because it's downloaded on there. So this concludes our tech talk about internet browser extensions. Hope you found this useful. And this will be our last tech talk of 2020. So All our Tech Talks are available on our YouTube channel to watch at any time that you would like, so you can go back through previous Tech Talks if you missed any.